I've spent 20 years catching liars for a living. So when my wife returned from her business trip, wearing another man's $8,000 Rolex, I knew exactly what game she was playing. What I didn't expect was how far she'd go to destroy me when I asked her to leave. You think you know someone after 8 years of marriage? Think again. My name is Wesley Harding. I'm 42 years old and work as an insurance fraud investigator for Continental Mutual. Ironic, right? I spend my days uncovering other people's lies while remaining completely blind to the deception under my own roof. It was a Tuesday when everything fell apart. Stephanie had been away at what she called a marketing conference in Chicago for 4 days. She was supposed to be back Monday afternoon, but called claiming her flight got canceled due to storms. I checked the weather in Chicago, clear skies. Just another lie I let slide. When she finally walked through her front door at 10:17 a.m. on Tuesday, something was off. She wheeled her suitcase in, kicked off her shoes, and barely acknowledged me sitting at the kitchen island with my coffee. Didn't even bend down to pet Baxter, our golden retriever, who wiggled excitedly at her return. Coffee? I asked, watching her movements carefully. Already had some at the airport, she replied, not meeting my eyes. That's when I noticed it, the watch. A sleek, expensive-looking men's watch peeking out from her wrist as she pushed up her sleeve. Definitely not hers, definitely not mine. New accessory? I asked, nodding toward her arm. Stephanie froze for a split second before looking down. Oh, she said, quickly pushing it back in her sleeve. Must have grabbed it by mistake from the hotel nightstand. 20 years investigating insurance fraud teaches you to spot a lie from a mile away. Her eyes darted left. Classic tell. Her voice pitched slightly higher. She was lying through her teeth. Hotel nightstands don't stock Rolex Submariners, I said calmly. That's about an $8,000 mistake. Her face hardened. Are you interrogating me now, Wesley? Is this how you welcome me home? I set my coffee down. Where were you really, Steph? Chicago. You knew that. I pulled out my phone, showed her the screenshot of the weather report. No canceled flights due to storms. Try again. Her mouth tightened into a thin line. I don't have to explain myself to you. Actually, you do. That's kind of how marriage works. I stood up slowly. After my wife returned from a trip, she came back with something I didn't expect. Another man's watch. So I'll ask once more. Where were you? And whose watch is that? She stared at me. Then something in her expression shifted. A smile, cold, challenging. Veil. And you really don't want to know whose watch it is. That smile. That was the moment my world collapsed. Pack your things, I said. I want you out of this house by tonight. Stephanie didn't leave that night. Instead, she planted herself in our living room like a squatter who happened to have a key. She kicked off her shoes, turned on the TV, and acted like I hadn't just told her to pack her bags. Classic deflection technique. I'd seen 100 times during investigations. Pretend nothing happened and maybe it'll go away. I grabbed my jacket and headed to the garage. Needed to clear my head, get some physical distance before I said something I couldn't take back. As I fired on my motorcycle, a restored '89 Harley Softail I'd rebuilt myself, my phone buzzed. A text from her. You're overreacting. We need to talk when you calm down. I didn't respond. Rode for an hour along the coast highway, the Pacific churning beside me like the anger in my gut. When I returned, she was asleep on the couch, the Rolex conspicuously absent from her wrist. Morning came with a forced normalcy that was almost comical. Stephanie made coffee, hummed while scrolling through her phone, even asked what I wanted for dinner, as if yesterday never happened. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching this performance with professional detachment. Are we really doing this? I finally asked. She looked up, feigning confusion. Doing what? Pretending you didn't come home, wearing another man's watch. Pretending you weren't in Vail when you said you were in Chicago. Stephanie sighed dramatically. It's not what you think, Wesley. Enlighten me then. She launched into a story so full of holes it would have made a rookie fraudster blush. Something about meeting colleagues for drinks, a mixed-up watch, a last-minute change of conference location. The more she talked, the more she contradicted herself. You know what I do for a living, right? I interrupted. I catch people in lies every day. It's literally my job. Her expression hardened. You don't get to interrogate me like one of your fraud cases. Then stop lying like one of my fraud cases. She slammed her coffee mug down. You want the truth? Fine. You've been so wrapped up in your job, in your precious motorcycle, in everything but me. You think I feel appreciated? Desired? I've been invisible in this marriage for years. I didn't flinch. So your solution was to sleep with someone else. I needed to feel something again. The words hung between us, an admission wrapped in accusation. Classic blame shifting. I'd written reports on this exact behavior countless times. That's not a justification, I said evenly. That's an excuse. She threw her hands up. Of course you'd say that. Always so logical, so rational. No emotion, just facts. Here's a fact. You cheated. Here's another. I want you out. Stephanie's face changed, a calculated softening. I'd seen this move before too, the pivot from attack to sympathy play. Wesley, she said, voice gentler. We can work through this. 8 years of marriage. Don't throw that away over one mistake. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I'd married was somewhere in there, but right now all I saw was someone trying to manipulate her way out of consequences. It wasn't a mistake, I said quietly. It was a choice. Multiple choices, actually. Lying about where you were. Sleeping with someone else. Lying about it after. Those aren't mistakes, Stephanie. They're deliberate decisions. Her facade cracked, just slightly. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine emotion. Fear. The following morning, my phone rang at 6:17 a.m. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But years of investigative work teaches you that unexpected calls often matter most. Wesley Harding. I answered, voice still rough with sleep. A hesitant pause. Mr. Harding? You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. My name is Cole Brennan. I sat up straight, instantly alert. How did you get this number? From Stephanie's phone, when she was in the shower. His voice dropped. Look, I'm not calling to cause trouble. I'm calling because I just found out she's married. A cold wave washed over me. Let me guess. Rolex Submariner, blue face. Yeah, he sounded surprised. How'd you? She came home wearing it. Silence stretched between us, awkward and heavy with shared understanding. She told me she was divorced. Cole finally said. Said the house was hers alone. I only discovered the truth when I saw your name on an insurance card in her wallet. Googled you. Found your company profile. I leaned against the headboard, processing this information. Why are you telling me this? Because... He exhaled heavily. She's been talking about moving in with me. When I confronted her about you last night, she went ballistic. Started saying you were controlling, that you monitored her calls, tracked her movements. I almost laughed. Classic deflection. I'm an insurance fraud investigator, Mr. Brennan. I don't need to track my wife. I can spot a lie from a mile away. Occupational hazard. That makes two of us misled, he said. Look, she left my place furious last night. Said she was going to fix things with you. I don't know what that means, but thought you should know. After hanging up, I walked through her silent house with new clarity. In my home office, I pulled out the property documents from my safe. The mortgage was solely in my name. Stephanie had insisted on keeping finances separate when we married. Her financial independence, she called it. I saw it differently now. I made 3 calls. One to change the locks, one to my attorney, and one to my brother asking if he could store some of her things temporarily. By early afternoon, I had packed most of Stephanie's clothes and personal items. Not angrily, not destructively, methodically, like cataloging evidence. When the locksmith finished, I placed her things carefully in the guest room and texted her, "We need to talk. Come alone." She arrived at sunset, confidence radiating from her like heat. That confidence faltered when her key didn't work. I opened the door halfway. Cole called me this morning. The color drained from her face. You had no right to contact him. I didn't. He contacted me. Stephanie didn't take the news well that Cole had reached out to me. The calm facade she'd maintained cracked like thin ice. You're lying, she hissed, trying to push past me into the house. I stood firm. He told me everything. How you claim to be divorced. How you've been planning to move in with him. And you believed him over me? Your wife. Ex-wife. Soon enough. I corrected. And yes, his story checks out. Yours has had inconsistencies from the start. Her strategy shifted instantly. Anger morphing to tears with theatrical precision. Wesley, please. I made a mistake. We can work through this. I'd seen this performance before with insurance claimants. The emotional pivot when facts weren't on their side. Your things are packed in the guest room. You could take what you need tonight. I'll have the rest sent to your sister's place. You can't just throw me out, she said, tears vanishing as quickly as they appeared. This is my house, too. I handed her the mortgage documents. Legally, it's not. Your choice to keep your name off the paperwork, remember? She snatched the papers, scanning them with growing fury. You planned this. No, you did. The moment you decided to lie about who you are to Cole. The moment you came home wearing his watch. Her eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. You have no idea what you're starting. Actually, I do. My voice remained steady. I've documented everything, Stephanie. The lies. The contradictions. Cole's statement. You won't win this. She shoved the papers back at me. I'm taking my things. But this isn't over. I stepped aside, letting her enter. I've been investigating fraud for 20 years. The truth always comes out eventually. She stormed past me to the guest room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I waited in the living room, Baxter's head heavy on my knee, his brown eyes watching me with canine concern. An hour later, she emerged with 2 suitcases and a duffel bag. No tears now, just cold, calculated anger. You'll regret this, she said from the doorway. Maybe, I admitted, but I'd regret staying with someone who could lie so easily even more. After she left, I locked the door and poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. The house felt emptier, but somehow less suffocating. As I sipped my drink, I realized this wasn't the end. Stephanie wouldn't go quietly. People who build their lives on deception rarely do. This was just the opening move in what would likely become a complicated game. Fortunately, strategy was something I excelled at. 2 days after Stephanie left, I received a notification from my bank. Someone had attempted to access our joint savings account, the one we'd maintained for household emergencies. The IP address traced back to her sister's neighborhood. I called the bank immediately and froze the account. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Stephanie, voice razor sharp. You froze our account. Our emergency fund. Yes, I confirmed. Given the circumstances, it seemed prudent. That's my money too, Wesley. Half of it is, I agreed. My attorney will handle the division of assets. Until then, everything stays where it is. She hung up without another word. I spent that evening installing security cameras around the property, one at the front door, one covering the driveway, another near the back entrance. Not out of paranoia, but from years of experience with fraud cases. People backed into corners often make desperate moves. The following morning, I was reviewing case files in my home office when an email notification popped up, from Stephanie to several of our mutual friends. I clicked it open, jaw tightening as I read. I never wanted to share this publicly, but I need support right now. Wesley's behavior has become increasingly controlling. When I try to leave for a few days to clear my head, he locked me out of our home and accounts. I'm afraid of what he might do next. Pure fiction, but crafted just plausibly enough to seed doubt. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. It was calculated character assassination. My phone started buzzing with texts from concerned friends. Most were checking if everything was okay. A few had already taken sides. I didn't engage immediately. Instead, I reached out to Cole Brennan, requesting a formal statement about his relationship with Stephanie and her claims about her marriage. To his credit, he agreed without hesitation. She's been telling people I'm unstable too, he explained. Said I was possessive, threatened her when she tried to leave. The next blow came that afternoon. A colleague at the insurance firm forwarded an anonymous email sent to HR, suggesting I had anger issues that might compromise my work. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. That night, I carefully drafted my response. Not an emotional defense or counteraccusation, but a simple, factual timeline with supporting evidence. The Rolex incident, Cole's statement, screenshots of her contradictory messages. I sent it only to those who had reached out directly. Some people won't believe you, my brother warned during our evening call. They'll take her side regardless of evidence. I know, I replied, but I'm not fighting for public opinion. I'm protecting what's mine, my reputation, my career, my home. As I hung up, Baxter nudged my hand with his muzzle, eyes concerned. We'll be all right, boy, I assured him, scratching behind his ears. We've weathered worse storms. But the hurricane was just beginning to gather strength. Stephanie's campaign escalated with frightening precision. 2 days after my email response, I discovered she'd created a private Facebook group titled Supporting Survivors. The profile image? Our wedding photo with my face obscured. The description claimed it was a safe space for people dealing with controlling partners. Several mutual acquaintances had already joined. My attorney advised restraint. Document everything, but don't engage directly. She's building a narrative that any reaction from you will reinforce. Sound advice, but harder to follow when I arrived at work Monday morning to find hushed conversations stopping as I approached. My department director called me into his office before lunch. "There's been a complaint, Wesley," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. Usually I'd dismiss anonymous accusations, but given your role investigating sensitive claims, the complaint alleged I'd used company resources to track my wife's movements and harass her friends. Complete fabrication, but damaging to an insurance fraud investigator's reputation. "I can disprove every word of this," I stated calmly, though anger burned beneath my professional demeanor. "I believe you," he replied, "but we'll need to follow protocol. Administrative leave until the internal review concludes." Driving home, I realized Stephanie's strategy. She couldn't beat me with direct confrontation, so she'd attack from angles I couldn't easily defend: social perception, professional standing, mutual relationships. At home, I found an unmarked envelope taped to my front door. Inside were printouts of text messages allegedly from me to Stephanie, threatening, controlling messages I'd never written. Obvious forgeries, but convincing to anyone who didn't know better. That's when I made a decision. If she wanted war, I'd give her one, fought with precision and evidence rather than emotions and allegations. I started with Kendra, Stephanie's former colleague who'd left the marketing firm 6 months earlier. We'd met at company functions, maintained casual friendly contact. I called her that evening. "I wasn't going to get involved," she admitted, "but what she's doing isn't right." Kendra revealed Stephanie had been openly discussing her affair at work for months, bragging about trading up and showing off gifts from Cole. More importantly, she'd told colleagues about her exit strategy, making me look unstable, so she could start fresh with a clean financial slate. "She kept screenshots of her discussions about finances," Kendra warned. "Edited some of them to make it seem like you were controlling the money." I thanked her, adding her statement to my growing file of counter-evidence. That night, I installed additional cameras and backed up every piece of communication between Stephanie and me to multiple secure locations. Not out of fear, but strategic preparation. "Know your opponent's next 3 moves," my mentor at the insurance company always said. I could see Stephanie's next steps clearly now, and I was ready. The administrative leave from work gave me something unexpected: time to build my case methodically, without the distraction of daily responsibilities. I approached it like my most complex fraud investigation, creating a detailed timeline of events with supporting evidence for each point. On Wednesday morning, I received a text from my neighbor, "Mike, someone was parked outside your house for almost an hour last night. Dark sedan, couldn't see the driver." I checked my security footage immediately. The car was positioned just at the edge of my camera's range, deliberate placement by someone who knew where to park. I upgraded my security system that afternoon, adding 2 cameras with enhanced night vision and wider angles. Later that day, Daniel Roberts, a detective I'd collaborated with on several insurance fraud cases, called. "Wanted to give you a heads up. Your wife filed a police report claiming harassment." My stomach tightened, but my voice remained even. "What kind of harassment?" "Says you've been sending threatening messages, driving by her sister's place, calling and hanging up. All documented as false, I assume." "That's why I'm calling," Daniel confirmed. "Report's been filed, but it's thin. No evidence provided yet. Just be careful. These things can escalate quickly." I thanked him and immediately forwarded my complete evidence file to my attorney. Daniel's warning was clear. Stephanie was laying groundwork for potential legal action. That evening, my brother came over with takeout and beers. "You look like hell," he observed, dropping into my couch. "Feel like it too," I admitted. "She's trying to dismantle my entire life." He popped open a beer. "So what's the plan?" "You always have a plan." I did. Despite appearances, I've been building a strategic counteroffensive rather than merely defending. I filed for divorce, citing alienation of affection, with evidence. I've secured statements from Cole, Kendra, and 3 others documenting her pattern of fabrications. And tomorrow, I meet with the company's senior partners to present my side before the review board convenes. My brother studied me. She won't expect you to move this fast. Exactly. People who manipulate expect you to be reactive, not proactive. They count on your emotional response, creating openings they can exploit. He nodded slowly. Remember that insurance fraud ring in Seattle? The one that almost got you fired? You said something then I never forgot. I smiled slightly. The truth doesn't need theatrics. It just needs methodical documentation. You're going to win this, Wes. I wasn't so sure. Stephanie was creative and ruthless. But I was prepared for whatever came next. The following morning, my doorbell rang at 6:30 a.m. When I checked the security camera, I saw Stephanie's sister Julie standing on my porch, arms crossed, expression grim. This was unexpected. Julie and I had always gotten along well, but I assumed she'd taken Stephanie's side. I opened the door cautiously. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "About my sister and what she's doing." Julie refused coffee, pacing my living room instead. "Stephanie's staying with me, as you know. Last night, I overheard her on the phone discussing how to accelerate the timeline." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "What timeline?" "From what I gathered, she's planning to claim you violated the non-existent restraining order." Julie's expression tightened. "She mentioned planting evidence, your DNA, items from your house, at her car, or around my property. My years investigating fraud had prepared me for many things, but the calculated nature of this still stunned me." "Why are you telling me this?" Julie sat heavily on my couch. "Because I know my sister. She's always had a gift for rewriting reality when things don't go her way. But this is different. It's methodical. You're risking your relationship with her by coming here." She nodded grimly. "Some things matter more than family loyalty. Like truth." After Julie left, I called my attorney immediately. "We need to accelerate our timeline, too," I explained, outlining what I'd learned. "And I need a formal deposition from Julie, today if possible." The next blow came that afternoon. I received notification of an emergency hearing for a protective order filed by Stephanie, claiming recent escalation in threatening behavior. The timing aligned perfectly with Julie's warning. I submitted my complete evidence file to the court, including Julie's freshly notarized statement and security footage showing I hadn't left my property during the time Stephanie claimed I'd been following her. That evening, Cole called. "She's been contacting me nonstop," he said, voice tense, alternating between threats and reconciliation offers. "Yesterday, she mentioned something about making sure you get what you deserve before the hearing." I thanked him for the warning and added this information to my file. Then I made a decision that went against my nature. I went public, not with accusations or emotional appeals, but with a simple, factual account sent to our mutual friends and my professional colleagues, detailing the documented pattern of fabrications with supporting evidence attached. "I've remained silent until now out of respect for our history," I wrote. "But I can no longer allow these calculated attacks on my character and career to continue unchallenged." My brother questioned this move. "Isn't this playing into her hands? Giving her the reaction she wants?" "No," I explained. "She wants an emotional outburst she can frame as instability. This is the opposite, calm, factual, and thoroughly documented." That night, as I double-checked my security system before bed, Baxter on my heels, my phone lit up with successive notifications. Friends, colleagues, even casual acquaintances responding to my message with support, expressing shock at the evidence I provided. Several revealed Stephanie had approached them with increasingly alarming stories about me, stories that contradicted each other when viewed collectively. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The hearing was still ahead, but the tide was turning. Not because I'd fought fire with fire, but because I'd responded to chaos with order, to fiction with documented fact. The most damning evidence against a liar is often simply the inconsistency of their own words. The morning of the hearing arrived with unexpected clarity. After weeks of chaos, I felt strangely calm, the kind of focus that comes when you know you've prepared thoroughly for a critical moment. My attorney, Eleanor Richards, met me at the courthouse steps. "Ready?" she asked, cool and professional. "More than ready," I confirmed. Inside, Stephanie was already seated with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man with an aggressive reputation. She'd opted for a conservative outfit, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, the picture of a wronged, frightened woman. When she saw me, Her expression shifted briefly to something harder before settling back into practiced vulnerability. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the file before addressing the court. I've read the petition for the protective order and the respondent's counter-evidence. Ms. Harding, your allegations are serious. Mr. Harding, your defense is extensive. Stephanie's attorney presented first, painting a picture of escalating harassment, threatening messages, and stalking behavior. He referenced the police report Daniel had warned me about and submitted printouts of the fabricated text messages. My client fears for her safety, he concluded dramatically. She seeks the court's protection from a man who cannot accept the end of their marriage. As Eleanor presented our defense, I watched Stephanie's face. With each piece of evidence, the security footage proving I never left my property during alleged stalking incidents, Julie's sworn statement about Stephanie's plans to plant evidence, the phone records disproving harassment claims, her confident expression fractured. The turning point came when Eleanor called Cole Brennan to testify. Stephanie visibly flinched when he entered. Cole, composed but clearly uncomfortable, confirmed under oath that Stephanie had misrepresented her marital status, planned her exit strategy months in advance, and recently pressured him to provide false statements. She specifically asked me to say that Mr. Harding had threatened me. Cole stated clearly. When I refused, she threatened to claim I had harassed her instead. The judge's expression remained neutral, but her questions became increasingly pointed towards Stephanie's attorney. When Kendra testified about Stephanie's workplace boasts regarding her perfect plan to secure financial advantage, the judge's pen stopped moving altogether as she simply watched Stephanie's reactions. By the time Eleanor submitted the comprehensive timeline documenting Stephanie's contradictory claims to different people, the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted decisively. The judge denied the protective order and ordered a follow-up hearing to investigate potential perjury concerns. Outside the courtroom, Stephanie stormed past without looking at me, her attorney trailing behind, already attempting damage control. "This isn't over," Eleanor cautioned as we walked to the parking lot. "But you've significantly strengthened your position for the divorce proceedings." That evening, I received an unexpected message from Stephanie's sister. "She's packed up and left my place. Didn't say where she's going. You okay?" I texted back. "Better than I've been in weeks," came the reply. "The truth matters, Wesley." "Yes," I thought, setting down my phone. "It always has." 3 months later, I stood on my back deck, watching Baxter chase shadows across the lawn in the late afternoon sun. The divorce was finalized yesterday, quicker than expected after Stephanie's disappearing act proved permanent. She'd eventually surfaced in Arizona with a hastily deleted social media post that showed her location. After her dramatic courtroom defeat, most of her support evaporated when friends and colleagues compared notes and realized the extent of her manufactured narratives. Cole had reached out last month, a brief message letting me know she'd contacted him again with reconciliation attempts that quickly turned to threats when rejected. I wished him well and suggested documentation strategies. Some lessons you only need to learn once. My administrative leave had ended 3 weeks after the hearing. The company's internal investigation cleared me completely, with my department director personally apologizing for the process. Procedural necessity, he called it. I understood. Insurance is about managing risk, including reputational risk. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle or career disruption, but the shattered trust. Not just in Stephanie, but in my own judgment. How had I missed the signs for so long? Professional detachment had made me observant with strangers but blind at home. My brother arrived with pizza and beer, our Friday tradition since everything imploded. "Place looks better," he observed, noting the new furniture and rearranged living room. "Less like a crime scene, more like an actual home." I smiled. Felt like time for a change. We settled on the deck chairs, bottles opened, pizza steaming between us. "Heard anything from her?" he asked cautiously. "Not directly," I answered. Her final divorce papers were signed through her attorney. The settlement was surprisingly reasonable, because she knew she had no leverage left. I nodded. The threat of a perjury investigation tends to focus the mind. My brother studied me. "You doing okay?" "Really, getting there," I admitted. "Some days are harder than others." The investigation skills that had defined my career had ultimately protected me from Stephanie's worst attempts to destroy what I'd built. But they hadn't protected my heart from the fundamental betrayal, the years of deception from someone I'd trusted completely. You know what the strangest part is? I said, watching Baxter chase a squirrel along the fence line. I don't hate her. I just don't recognize her anymore. My brother nodded. The Stephanie you married probably never existed. That truth had taken months to accept. The woman I loved had been a carefully constructed persona, designed to fit whatever she needed in the moment. When that design no longer served her purpose, she simply created a new one. As the sun set, casting long shadows across my backyard, I felt a weight lifting. Not completion or perfect closure. Life rarely offers such neat endings, but a solid foundation to build upon. The phone calls and texts of support had continued long after the hearing. Colleagues, friends, even casual acquaintances expressing respect for how I'd handled everything. Not with rage or public accusations, but with calm, factual persistence in the face of chaos. You planning to date anytime soon? My brother asked, reaching for another slice. I laughed, surprising myself with how genuine it felt. Not anytime soon, but eventually, yeah. Next time, I'd apply the same careful observation to my personal life that I'd always brought to my professional one. Not with suspicion or mistrust, but with awareness. After all, the skills that had protected me through this storm were the same ones that would help me rebuild: methodical planning, attention to detail, and the patient pursuit of truth. Baxter trotted back to the deck, tail wagging, ready for his share of dinner. Some loyalties, at least, remained unquestionable.